thank you today, my lovely husband, for agreeing to this interview. I just wanted, because I write a lot about homeschooling, I'm a homeschooler myself. I'm absolutely in love with the idea of homeschooling, but I married somebody who didn't know much about it, and we're going to homeschool our children. And so I wanted to do an interview with him to ask him a little bit about it. My first question for you, Tristan, is what is your educational background? I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, maybe your parents' influences, and yeah, go for it.
So I guess the main thing from my background is I went through the schooling system. I went to a public primary school, and then I went to a private high school. I think the reason I went to a private high school was because my parents really valued education, and it's probably the best school around. It cost them a lot of money, but that's probably the main reason why I got sent to the private school.
And was that a Christian school that you went to?
It was a grammar school, so it wasn't specifically a Christian school, but it certainly did promote Christian values. But I would say the main focus was academia, and then probably Christian themes. So we did do chapel once a week, and there was a Christian group at lunchtime, but the vast majority of my peers in my year were non-Christian. So we probably had 100 kids in our year group in high school, and I'd say probably 10 of those were really active Christians.
So my next question for you is, when you first heard about homeschooling, what did you think about it?
Well, I definitely thought it was an interesting idea. I'd never knew anyone really who'd done it before, and it'd certainly never been tabled to me by my parents as an option, or by anyone else, any of my other friends. None of their parents had ever kind of spoken to them that it was a realistic option. So I was probably more intrigued by it, and interested to see how it would work, and kind of comparing it to the school system.
That's interesting. So my third question, and I do know a little bit about your background. Did you know any homeschoolers as you were growing up? And if so, how did they shape your perception of homeschoolers in general? Maybe homeschoolers you knew in high school, that sort of thing?
I didn't know many, or really, I didn't really know any really well, but I'd heard of one or two. And actually the only one that comes to mind was a guy who came to our school in high school in year 11, and he had previously been homeschooled his whole life and had just come to school for the last 2 years, year 11 and year 12. And we just kind of thought he was quite weird generally. He kind of took a while to fit in, obviously, which is understandable because he'd never been to school before. But he was the only homeschooler who I kind of came across in school.
How would, so yeah, I was just wondering, how would you describe the grown-up homeschoolers you know now, say in the community you live in or in church and that sort of stuff? And would you say they're an advertisement or not for homeschooling?
Well, to generalize, I would say they are an advertisement. Like they're um, pretty good kind of product, I guess, if you want to put it that way. That's to generalize. They seem obviously they seem to have a good connection with Christianity. The two seem to go relatively closely. So raised in Christian families, and they generally seem to be quite, I guess, diligent kind of people, and pleasant. Maybe some of them are quieter than the average person, but yeah, really. Is it a bad thing? No, not necessarily. No. And the majority of them I've enjoyed getting to know, and yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, they're a lot. Most of them are really nice, kind of humble Christian people. There are a few exceptions, but generally speaking, they're really good.
Okay, my next question is to you as I guess a potential homeschooling dad. So, are you concerned about our children's academic achievement falling short of the standards that you might get in school, say if we homeschool?
Not really, no. I think probably the main advantage academically that homeschooling has is the ratio of teacher to student. It'd be 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 or 1-to-3 or how many kids there are in the family, and that ratio is just would really facilitate learning well. All questions are on the table. You don't have to wait like you do in school for other kids, or get lost between the cracks as the class progresses, and if you don't, or whatever the case may be. So I think that ratio would really facilitate good academic standards. And just having the time to digest new concepts and new information. School, there is a lot of wasted time in terms of classroom management and managing kids and getting to and from the classes and discipline and lunchtime and recess and going to and from lunch and to and from recess, and then all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of wasted time. So I think you could be a lot more efficient in homeschooling, and if the kid is motivated, then they can learn more probably. And I guess today the other thought is that there's so many online resources to learn stuff, which would help as well, and help the parent who's teaching them as well.
Fantastic. It's fantastic. So I guess I wanted to ask you about the homeschooling socialization question. So this question is probably the biggest question that parents have concerns about in regards to homeschooling. So my question for you, are you concerned about the homeschooling socialization thing people talk about?
No, is probably the short answer. I think one thing that I've picked up from talking to you and other people about homeschooling is that homeschooling is only as good or healthy or unhealthy as the parents, because the parents is obviously leading it and leading it the majority of the time, and if they're unhelpful or they're bad or have their own agenda or whatever, then that's going to flow through to the kids. But on the flip side, if the parents are really helpful and healthy and committed to the child's best interests, then homeschooling can be really great. And so in relation to socialization, I think if the parents intentionally seek to address that issue, then I think it should be fine. It shouldn't be a problem at all. I think the trick is just identifying it as a potential issue if it's not addressed, and then B, being really intentional about addressing it and putting measures in place to make sure that the child is socialized well and just has that ability to empathize with other kids, other people. I think that empathy and sometimes the humility that you get from being around other people, because other people, other kids, other older people, socializing can really grow you as a person, as much as it may test you. It's a really important thing for your growth and your understanding of other people, and ultimately how you love other people, which is the crux of Christianity. So it is really important. So I think you've just got to be intentional about it. I mean, I think if practically things like getting connected with the homeschooling group in the local region, sport, I think is a no-brainer. Like it's just there's going to be other kids and parents there, teachers teamwork and all that kind of stuff, and there's lots of social opportunities there. And then there's abundance of different clubs, and if you live in a community, there's heaps of ways you can connect your kids with people.
Great. That's really great, Tristan. And my next question for you is, do you think our children will miss out on some opportunities that they might get in schools if they are homeschooled?
Yeah, potentially. Yep. Like our school, we did some really cool stuff. We went on lots of camps and snow camps, and we used to have this thing called a music and drama competition every year, which is really incredible. Opportunity to, if kids who are interested in music, to play music or to dance or do drama. We did like photography. We had these amazing, expensive photography labs, which is great to go in the darkroom and develop photos. And then we had it was a private school, so I had a fair bit of cash. So the facilities were pretty good. We had this incredible woodworking lab as well, where you can you learn to craft wood. So I think there's an element, to be honest, where you can miss out on resources. There's a home environment just literally cannot have the resources that a heavily funded school can have. So yes, I think you can miss out on resources and some events and opportunities. But again, I think you could probably mitigate a lot of that in homeschooling by just connecting with the local community. and seeking out people who have those resources, and then getting involved in, I'm pretty sure things like the Duke of Edinburgh scheme is, anyone can go on that. You don't have to be from a school as such. There are like programs in the community that you can utilize, scouts, all that kind of stuff.
Fantastic. Okay, so do you think our children will have opportunities to do things homeschooling that they might not have had if they went to school?
Yes. Yeah, I think from what I've heard, homeschooling can be quite flexible time-wise, and by virtue of that, it frees children up to do things that they couldn't do in school. So, for example, if they spend maybe 4 hours doing formal kind of education, then they have a stack of time in the afternoon to do stuff of their choice. And I think just by virtue of having that time, it gives them the opportunity to be a bit more creative and problem solve and do things. So maybe it might be building a cubby house, or building a shed or something. Just having the time to do something that the child is really invested in, and they're doing it because they want to, not just because the curriculum tells them they have to do it. I think that in itself, that idea in itself is an opportunity. So I think it's just the time gives more freedom and flexibility to the child.
Yeah, great. So my next question is that it's talking about like subjects. So are there any subjects you think schools can teach better? Homeschools can teach better than schools. So in this, I know I've heard you talk about you wish that when you went to school they'd taught you more practical things about finance. So recently my husband and I have been reading The Barefoot Investor, and I remember Tristan remarking to me, it could be just so practical if schools would actually teach this super practical money skills. So in terms of finance, religion, lessons about character, history, do you think homeschools could teach that better? Your thoughts on that, Tristan? Thanks.
Yes, I think that, and that's one of the other things that kind of interests me in homeschooling initially when you told me about it was learning more practical things. Not that learning theoretical things is bad or wasteful. Definitely has a place and is really necessary, but we do live in a practical world where things need to get done and services needed to be provided to people. And so I think I wished in school I got more practical kind of life wisdom and skills. So as you said, dealing with finances, like I did, I think I did year 10 or year 11 in economics, and it was just all theory about supply and demand and things like that, but it just didn't actually kind of the rubber didn't hit the road in terms of saving or interest rates or shares or investing or buying a house or managing your superannuation or anything like that. And they're really things that if I'd known when I was in my late teens, it would have helped me immensely. But we just didn't learn that. So finance, character, definitely. Our school, we did we touched on things about character, and kind of thinking about who you are as a person. I remember going on like a 2-day camp for that, but really that's just like the tip of the iceberg, with what you could kind of need to go into. I think for a young person, and particularly in the teenage years, where that's the greatest question of a teenager is like, where am I at? Who am I? What's my identity? How do I want to be perceived? And what am I good at? And just fundamentally, where's my value at as a person? And they're really deep questions, and if they're not addressed in the kind of boyhood, or that kind of, or girlhood, or that kind of early teenage to late teenage years, if they're not addressed there, then I feel like people are often clutching at straws trying to answer these questions later in life. And I just think building a character, not building character, more understanding character and self-awareness and all that kind of stuff has great potential to be taught in homeschool. But again, it just comes down to the parents. If the parents might not think that's important, and it might not happen at all, but if the parents do think it's important, then it's a great platform to mentor a child. And you just can't get that kind of that close mentorship at school. And then in regards to obviously Christianity, the two kind of go hand in hand. But just teaching children through a Christian lens is helpful and practical as well, I think.
Fantastic. So in our earlier years, I probably was a little bit, to be honest, nuts about homeschooling. I loved it. And I probably went a little bit over the top in trying to convince you it was the best thing in the world. So my question to you is, what was the least effective thing I have done to try and convince you about homeschooling being a great thing, but that has actually turned you off homeschooling?
I think probably is and you don't say this anymore, and but I think when you get really passionate about something, anything really, you can think that it's the only way. It has to be done this way for everyone, and kind of blanket that. So I think in way back in the earlier days, you when you're really kind of probably perhaps overzealous about homeschooling, kind of saying that everyone should be homeschooled, and that turned me off, because I don't think that's the case. There's so many circumstances where it's not appropriate. So I think blanketing and kind of mandating it for everyone turned me off. But you were just really passionate about it, so it didn't come out of a bad intention, but you were just really really into it. But I think you've kind of mellowed on that a little bit now, and think it's a great idea for a lot of people, particularly Christians, and that's what you're kind of advocating, and kind of spruiking the benefits of it. But I think now you would say that even then it's not fair. It's not for everyone, because it's a huge commitment, and structurally in the family context, it's just not practical.
And my next question is, what was the most effective thing I have done to try and convince you about homeschooling that's worked?
I
can cut out the big answers.
maybe just when you promote that idea of the freeness to learn, and just the child's got that space to explore things and make mistakes. I kind of wished I had that space to. I've never built a shed or a cubby house or a surfboard or something, and just have that time and space and freedom to have a go and make a mistake and then knock it down and revise the plans and try again, and that kind of freedom to make mistakes appealed to me. And I think childhood and teenage years are the ideal time to make mistakes and learn, and that's how we grow. So I think that really appealed to me. And then I can think of a few homeschoolers who really impressed me as people. Not to say that there's not a stack of people who went to school who don't impress me. There's that too, but it is nice to see some kind of actual real life people who have done it.
Yeah, okay. And so my last question for you is, when we do homeschool, we've decided to homeschool, will you be a little bit concerned about what some of your mates will say when you tell them you're homeschooling?
I think so. Yep. Particularly I've still got a lot of mates from school, and most people have been to school, and so there's definitely preconceptions with homeschooling. There's some really there are some horror stories out there, and some myths about being completely isolated and cut off from the world and stuff like that. There's going to be people who have those preconceptions about it. But I think, at the end, I'm not, I'm a little bit concerned, but they know me, and I think they, will kind of respect our decision with that one. And I guess that's what you're trying to do, is trying to just break down some preconceptions and myths about homeschooling in terms of awareness. So that's really good. Might raise a few eyebrows, but that's okay.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for letting me ask you these quite invasive questions. And hopefully I can think up some other great questions to ask you later on. So thanks for listening to us at How Do I Homeschool, and hopefully you can tune in next time. Thanks. Bye.